Listen, it's Dave Cooper and Mark Willie, and this is a BS Friday coming to you live back from Connecticut. Mark, man, I've seen like I have been all over the place lately.
I've virtually been able to travel because of you and your videos, Dave.
Hey, listen, it's the virtual road trip, right? I always love it. So try and live your virtual road trips through me. What the heck? But yeah, listen, what a great show we're going to have today, Mark. These two that we have coming on are doing something that we love to do, and that's teach, right? That's how do we become better? How do we build better? How do we build healthier? And how do we become more sustainable using, building science, passive house, offsite as the future of construction?
Amen, Dave. And welcome back from your road trip. I know you have another one coming up. No sooner do you unpack, but you pack. It was brilliant with Greg Ugaldi and all the units floating behind you this week. I watched it 3 times because it was just amazing to see your face as these modular units were being delivered. It was brilliant.
Yeah, no, it was fun. And, it was the first modular multifamily set ever in Washington, D.C., which was great. And it was an infill project. It was multifamily housing. And there was no parking. Everything was sidewalk. We had an audience all the way around us. I was getting heckled. I had people that just wanted to be on film. I felt like a news guy. It was a lot of fun. We had a great time.
Hey, Dave, it cost me about $35,000. I actually sent all those people to heckle you.
Hey, listen, you are known for that. So let's take the story straight. Everybody that I meet who entered that said they met you at a conference said, yeah, he was the guy heckling us from the background. Well, listen, everyone, we are live on 3 locations, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So please hit that like and share button right now. And as always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel because that's where you can catch all of the BS Fridays, past and future and present. So you don't ever miss a beat. You don't always have to be here. You can catch it. You can catch it at another time. All right, Mark. Listen, why don't you lead us into the guest that we're going to have on today?
So I have a quick announcement, Dave, before we get in the guests. This was not in the script, everyone. This is the birthday of my father, Walter Willie. So birthday. God's blessings to you, Dad. Thanks for tuning in.
Happy birthday to you. Leave your clothes on while I sing, Mark. Good. So that's awesome. Happy birthday, Dad. Love it, man. Way to go.
So our guests today, Dave, are wonderful. So it's a team, and we'll find out another way to say that word team later today. But it's also a brand, and they do training and so much. EMU, and they are brilliant. I'm thrilled to have them on with us today.
Well, why don't we bring them on? So we have Mariana Pickering and Enrico Bonilori. And I know I said they're going to beat me up as soon as I say their name. So let's bring them in and introduce them to everybody. And I'll change the screen. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, thanks for having us today.
Yeah, well, thank you for being here today. This is going to be an exciting topic for us because you're doing something that's very near and dear to Mark and myself, and that is trying to do things better, trying to educate, trying to be leaders in the industry. And the two of you have been doing this for quite some time, to the tune of where you have education and training. And I think that's what's really, really powerful here. So I want to hear from both of you. This is something that we do all the time. And I tell everybody from Mariana and Enrico, I want to know everything from the moment you were born to this very moment.
There you go.
Within 5 minutes. Can you guys pull that off in 5 minutes? So Mariana, why don't we start with you? Go for it. Let's get your background and your history.
So I grew up in Texas and went to a really great school where my mom was a teacher, and I was fortunate for that education and got to choose what I wanted to do for college and decided on architecture. I went to WashU in St. Louis for my undergrad, BA in architecture. And then, and while there, I did a study abroad at the Royal Institute in Copenhagen, Denmark. And then for my master's degree, went on to University of Sydney in Australia, where Enrico was also doing his master's. And we have a master's in design science. specifically in building science for sustainability. And then we moved to Enrico's hometown in Italy, Capriago, to open our architecture studio. And I'll pause there and let him do his background, because then our histories join up.
You're up, Enrico.
Yeah, so born and raised in a small town, rural Italy. Took my architectural master in Parma, Italy, and I got registered before I moved to Australia. Met Mariana there, moved back to the old town, and we started EMU back in 2008 or 2009, give or take, as an architecture practice. So we used to do all the design, permit application, site supervision, all of that. And at some point around 2015, after about 8 years of doing that, we asked ourselves how things were going as far as practice. And we had a moment where we really tried to evaluate if we felt like we were doing a big enough impact. And at the time, the answer we gave ourselves was no, because we were doing some good projects, but that was a small drop in the bucket versus where we saw the market going. That is what made us change what we do and go towards training. So that was about 4 years ago. That is when we made the big switch, and that is how EMU started providing training.
Ah, I love it. So, this is the perfect banner, because I think it just summarizes exactly what you just said. You guys are bridging the gap of building science and the construction industry, right? And that as I found out since joining all this BS talk with Mark, that's a big gap.
It is, yeah. That's actually our company mission, is to close the gap between advanced building science and what mainstream construction is doing. And we feel like, an education first approach is definitely important, but also standardizing and making it more accessible and affordable to the industry.
Yeah, for sure. Mark, this is right up your alley, man. What are you waiting for? I'm surprised you haven't jumped through the screen yet.
I'm happy to listen. I had a wonderful time interviewing them off camera prior, and to hear that story of taking steps in your path to question what you're doing and question what could be done, and pivoting and realigning and making that possible. That opens the doors not just for the two of you and your company, but it opens the doors for everyone else to get that training. And I just think it's brilliant. So Dave, I was quiet because I'm hoping to get out my clone machine and have more emus going around.
Well, I mean, is that possible? Can we have little emus everywhere? I don't know if we're in Star Wars or what we're in here.
We really want to make it as accessible as possible to license out to other trainers. We have other trainers joining in now and using our curriculum to teach those in other cities. And we're really trying to make it as easy for affiliates. We affiliate with a lot of organizations like the North American Passive House Network and GBA in Pittsburgh. So trying to help them get the content out as well.
Yeah. Did you say GBA in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, Green Building Alliance.
Yeah. Love it. Perfect. Well, I'm from Pittsburgh, so I hear Pittsburgh. My ears perk up. I'm ready to go. Let's go. Love it.
Dave, I think it's important to share with them the training experience you just had with SIGA.
Oh, yeah. I got to go to SIGA North America's training center, which was great. And I tell everybody this, and that's a good topic, because I really didn't understand it until I went through their training, as far as really, how the barriers and the flow of air, and not only on the exterior of a building, but also on the interior of the building, right? Most contractors, I was one of them, only put, the exterior barrier up. I was not doing interior, moisture barriers or any of that stuff, allowing moisture to get out. And it was a true eye opener, and it's free for anybody who wants to do it. I'll forever day say SIGA, these guys really got it going on. Etienne and their whole crew, get up there and do their free training, because it's worth its weight in gold. It really is. And I think that's the only way, builders are, most of them are like me, right? I'm a visual person. I learn by touching and doing. You can tout all the education and throw spreadsheets and books at me all day long, it'll never sink in until I actually have to practically try and do it and understand it. And I think that's a big thing in our industry, to have practical training.
For sure, yeah. SIGA is actually one of the manufacturers that donates to our training. We try to keep our training brand neutral so that we can, present the research in an unbiased fashion. But it's really great because manufacturers know that we're doing that. And so a lot of the really excellent high performance products get donated for all the builders to try out all the different things. And they've been donating since the very beginning. It's a great organization. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, and kudos to all those suppliers out there that are donating to it. It's a great cause, and it's a great way to brand yourself if you're in this space, to be known as somebody that truly is looking at the future of what's going on in the world. So, hey, I love hearing collaboration. Collaboration is good. Mark,
all right, here we go.
You ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right. So the first thing, I just love it because it has these great emojis. How can you ensure the health and durability of your building? Who wants to take this one?
Oh, I think I can step in, and that is one of the reasons why we started researching and teaching, because maybe it's our background in architecture. So we look at energy, but energy in my mind is secondary to health and buildings. Like if we think of why we build buildings, ever since mankind has invented buildings, is to provide shelter for people to live in. Shelter from the environment, shelter from the weather. And if buildings become unhealthy, they're kind of losing their mission. So our job as construction professionals is really to provide a healthy and comfortable environment. In today's day and age, we are developing the buildings to become more and more energy efficient by means of better insulation, more air sealing. But that has some risks associated with that from the building science point of view. You mentioned the internal air barrier and things like that, and all of those products and concepts are very climate specific, because if you're building out here in the West or on the East Coast or whatever, then your building is bridging your people to the local climate. So there's a response on the inside and a response to the outside. You can build extremely healthy and comfortable buildings that can also withstand crazy times such as the wildfires. We just presented some research done in Australia on how you can use the combination of air tightness and filtered mechanical ventilation in order to eliminate wildfires. So that is just part of the picture. And that does not have a price tag in ROI, sorry, a return on investment on, hey, what is the return on investment on my indoor court? So in the discussion of buildings, we see a lot of discussion on return on investment, energy savings, but to me that is secondary to health and providing shelter to people.
Yeah, for sure.
That was the short version. I can explain on that for days. So just
you know what? That was. I mean, you're right. I know you can go for days, and I think the way you summarized that was absolutely perfect. Go ahead, Mark. Mark was ready to go. I jumped ahead.
No, I was just saying it couldn't have been said clearer, and especially the part that you accented about the wildfires and just having our buildings closed, but having fresh and comfortable air coming in and out. It is so needed, and it's it traveled throughout. It traveled throughout the U.S. You guys probably experienced it in Colorado. We experienced it in the Midwest. I don't know if you saw it in D.C., Dave.
Yep, there was. In fact, it was in the news. There was a hazy smoke cloud all above D.C. this past week as well.
We've actually got a fire right nearby, about 50 miles west of us right now.
Do you really?
It's pretty hazy right here now.
Yeah. Well, hopefully
these are tragic events, but they really are accelerators for people understanding that our buildings can help us, can protect us.
I was going to say, we've seen such a huge increase just this past year in really valid conversations with homeowners that didn't necessarily exist before. I think there's a lot of awareness, both because of climate change issues, but the virus as well. There's just more conversation around the concept of indoor air quality and the fact that we have more control over that than one would think. And, builders are right there in it. They know intuitively that there's more they can be doing on that level, and they just really want to know how to do that. Most builders, want to be presenting their best craft. It's a matter of accessing that building science and that research.
Amen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with that. I mean, there's a lot of builders that are super professional and they want to up their game, but there is an education side to just understanding it. And the funny thing is, once you understand it, it's pretty common sense.
Yeah, totally.
Once you take all the big science words out of it.
Yeah, and I think that's where, with our training, we really try to focus on the why behind it. Like, if we can communicate to builders how to kind of understand the why and the physics, which I think Enrico is really good at teaching. He's really good at using really good analogies to kind of pare it down into something that just is common sense. And then you can apply that to all of this extra great knowledge that's out there from all the manufacturers about specific products and how to use them.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, that's awesome. So here's what I want to do, Mark. What do you think? I think we jump into the next topic because it's kind of something we've already covered a little bit on, or people can understand that's where we're heading here today. And then we're gonna say hello to a few people. Sound good?
Let's do it.
All right. So Enrico, Mariana, you guys are both big into training and teaching the trades. Let's talk about this because this passion, you guys, if I understood right, you were builders. Architects, right? Designing, but needed builders to do the work, I think is the better way of saying it, right? And you had some builders that could do it, but there's not enough of them. Is that correct?
Yeah, we had many builders. The issue we were facing as designers was that we would spend a lot of time designing wall assemblies that we knew would, on paper, theoretically, academically, meet the building science standards we wanted. But then we get to the site and there's a lot of implementation stuff that has to be taught. So we were spending hours and hours and hours on the construction site with our builders, teaching them how to do that, and them teaching us too about, as designers, how could we have designed this better for them, to make their lives easier. They have to deal with budgets, they've got to deal with low-skilled crews, all kinds of things. So how can we kind of bridge that, translate it correctly from the design phase to the building phase and really bring the team kind of more integrated? And we basically, that's where we came to the conclusion that, we really needed to be taking what we know about design, what we know about international building science, and translating that into something local for builders to be able to apply.
Yeah. And so real quick, I'm just curious. I mean, you guys have been doing this now for a while. How has the reception and adoption of builders been? Are you finding that hey, yeah, we really want to learn this stuff? Like when you launch this and you say, hey, we're going to do what you're doing. Mm-hmm. How quickly did it catch on?
More quickly than you would think. A lot of it, as you said, is common sense stuff. Mm-hmm. And the difference, the difference between high quality building and passive is pretty small. It's really just paying attention to details. Enrico often says in training, you can put the tape in the wrong place, or you can put it in the right place, or you can, clean the surface before you put the tape on or not. And, it's kind of simple steps like that make a huge difference. And so, you can maybe speak to your experience with the first crew of builders we trained in Italy on a project. They had no experience with passive house, and that went very well.
Well, yeah, we back in Italy, we started teaching this before we were actually training providers, back in 2010 or something. And, you teach the average bricklayer and the average carpenter that they need to air seal ABC, and they get it. Once you explain the why and the how, then it's not rocket science. Mm-hmm. It needs to be designed in a way that is actually doable. And there's plenty of ways to achieve the same performance, but it's important in my mind to explain what we are trying to do. So something that we explain in the class over and over is, we are here to achieve a purpose. We are not here to install a product. In fact, the least of the product we use, the better, because it saves you money and saves you time. So really focusing on the why really gets the point across. So I think that's why we promote the training, because if you get the why, then it gets easier.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead, Mark.
That's a great distinction, right? It's the purpose of why you're doing it. It's not, oh, I have this tape, so I'm going to put on a lot of tape. What are you doing that for? I don't know. Okay, let's start over, right?
Yeah. I mean, that gets into the whole Simon Sinek thing, right? It's why you do it.
Yeah.
That's what people buy into. Why, not how, right? I think is the how comes second. You got to get them to buy into the reasoning and the theory and the science behind it.
For sure.
Love it. All right, let's say hello to a few people. How about it, Mark?
Yeah.
You know anybody in the comments list there?
I've got so many, Dave. Start with someone, and we'll try to get through a couple real quick.
I'm gonna go straight from the top. We got good old George Ryman from Phoenix, Arizona. We're looking forward to BS Friday every week. Now, George, I'd like to know, is that smoke affecting your world in Arizona? It's gotta, if it's affecting our world out here. I can only imagine what it's like being so close to it. So love it. Oh boy, this guy again. Sean saying no more. I'm still waiting for my helicopter ride, Sean. Huge fans on Enrico and Mariana. Love the pods. Awesome. Thank you. Buzz Howitz. Say that word for me. I can never get it right. You say it, Mark.
The Buzzard is joining us from YouTube. Hit that like, Buzzard.
I love it. All right, we got good old Andrew Seeley. Great report on the DC. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it, Andrew. We had a lot of fun down there. Definitely had a lot of fun. Definitely did. Jennifer's she's writing up some long stuff here, so we'll go quick on this. Mark, where's Mark? This is kind of where it's almost like Fine Waldo. But usually it's I'm getting my names all messed up. Who's usually writing the long ones from it'll come to me. I'm sure they'll plug in here.
It'll come to me too, yeah.
Learn how the emu mob is changing the world one builder and trade at a time by teaching the how to. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So Jennifer's basically talking about everything that you guys do there. Yeah, I don't want to keep Mark covered too long. All right. Kaluzny's. Woo! I guess agree.
That's Katie Kaluzny in disguise from YouTube. How about that?
She must have got her hair done. It looks different. Hey, Katie. All right. Andrew, closing the gap is a super goal. Full respect and support to Team Emu. Thank you. All right. Here's one of my favorites from out west. Good old Jerry McCahey. Hi, guys, from Los Angeles and Tekra. Changing the way that builders are building one builder at a time in his world as well. He's doing a great job.
Thanks for joining us, Jerry, and all you do with the panelization process out there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on here. Jennifer had another comment. Like the McKinsey report, getting more projects to products. Designing it is good. Building it is better. Love it. Steve Black, why then how?
Yeah.
Amen.
I mean, that's perfect, right? Why then how?
Jennifer, there's our next T-shirt.
Why then how? You know what? Talk about saying something with very few words. I need to get better at that, but our show would not be very long. I'm sorry. I just found the guy. Henry Mickelberg. Usually Mark's covered when Henry writes. The inference here appears to be that the airtightness can't be guaranteed by design information only and require training of hands-on installers builds. Question mark.
I would for sure agree with that comment. Yeah, I think the more, one of the things we do in the trainings, we have job role simulation to try and encourage as much pre-planning and talking through the steps that are going to happen in advance of actually doing them. Yep. And all that's really trying to simulate is just an integrated design team. And the earlier any designer can bring the builder on board to that conversation, the better, because it's, what is every builder's nightmare? You get a set of drawings that are completely unrealistic and the architect says, can you just make that happen? Well, no. So the sooner you bring me into that conversation, the more I'm going to be able to say, actually, it'd be a lot better if we did it like this. And then you can have that back and forth, and the airtightness that is designed can actually be respected on site in a better way.
Great
That's a perfect part, because when I reflect on my builder training, it was in New York with, you probably know him, Kevin Brennan, Tomas O'Leary, Art McCormick, and my teammate, was an architect. So here you have me, a builder, with an architect. And I remember he grabbed the tape and he grabbed the membrane and he handed it to me and he goes, "Go do that window." And I said, no, we're a team, and that's the whole process, right?
Yeah.
Is how are we pulling that together? And it was characterized by all the other teams too, not just us. So owning that role and working it out together is part of what makes trainings so superior, so that once you're on the project, it becomes a muscle.
That's right.
Yeah, definitely. We see the best results in projects from ex-students, from alumni, when they've either come into the class with both someone from their design and their build team, or they are a design build company in the first place, or the builder comes to the tradesperson course and the designer goes to the designer consultant course. They're at least starting on the same page, starting with the same vocabulary and the same assumptions about goals, and again, starting with the same why,
And building on that, when we get teams, and we get teams that sometimes the architect and the builder come to the same training, we tend to break them apart because they may already have some roles established between themselves. So we try to break those away so that they can learn on their own. Otherwise, you're handling some hierarchies that may already be in place.
And then you see them reforming that conversation relative to whatever project they're working on. It's a lot stronger at that point.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Dave, can you throw that comment from Jennifer back up? That was brilliant, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Team of the week: bring the architects, builders together early in the process. And Steve Black wrote, "Jennifer for the win." There's a whole lot of banner going on here, but here's something else, that I want to show you real quick, because this is why we do this show. This exact comment right here. Katie Kaluzzi with her new hairdo. The Chicago Living Future Collaborative wants to do building contractor training. Would love to connect with Emu.
We'd love to. Let me know.
Yep, there you have it. I mean, this is what it's all about. It's about the collaboration here. All right, we're going to take one more. Go ahead, Mark.
Katie's also been on the show twice before. I'm involved with her organization, and we'll connect you guys after the show. And we encourage this. This is why the chatter happens. Dave pointed it out. It's bringing people together, because if we're silos, we're not transforming the industry. We're just holding corn.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Jerry McCaughey wrote a book. We're going to take this one last comment, and then we're moving back to our regular programming. Oh, where's Mark? Mark, you got to put your hands on top of it. All right. In Ireland, 20 years ago, we were supplying fully detailed walls to achieve airtightness for production home builders, and it's still going on today. Factory controlled conditions from true offsite manufacturers help ensure the building is airtight, because with precision of factory production, quality is easier to guarantee.
Definitely. I think that's something we hear from a lot of students, and we have a pilot program with a construction system that we designed. Several builders across the country are applying it. And the first takeaway after you've done it on site once is, wow, this would be a whole lot easier off site, and you would have a whole lot more quality assurance off site. So I really think we believe that that's the future of the construction industry. It's really a matter of making it accessible enough for builders to have that off-site space to do that. But that's great.
Agreed. All right, listen, enough fun. Let's get back to some business here, Mark.
Time to BS, and that means building science, people. Don't think the other way.
All right, so here's a quick question for the audience before the team answers it. Anybody in the comments want to take a guess, and do not Google it. What is an emu mob?
Do you have Jeopardy music?
I don't. Go ahead. You can give it to us, though.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. So literally a mob is the word that is used to describe a flock of emus. But we use it jokingly when we welcome folks into our community. One of the biggest advantages to training is actually meeting the other students. We still work with and talk to all the time a lot of people that we were in training with. And it's that community, and building the ecosystem of other professionals around you that are all on the same page that really becomes important if we want to move this forward. And so the mob is kind of our joking way of, and it's got lots of fun. We play on words when we invite people into the mob. So
I love it. I love it. All right, Mark, we're getting into the first dig here. So here we go. Let's talk about thermal bridge analysis.
So that is do you have a specific? Should I jump in? Or, okay.
Mark, did you have something specific, or you wanted Rico to?
I would like for you guys to explain what that is. So if someone comes to you and says, we're working on a wall assembly for multifamily building, would you guys take on thermal bridge analysis?
So we do a lot of modeling. We work almost exclusively in passive house or high performance buildings. And so we do a lot of modeling in bringing not only the buildings to meet the energy performance goals overall, but also to avoid more condensation in different climate zones. So thermal bridges are weak areas of the building thermal envelope, meaning that you do have insulation throughout your walls, ceilings, and whatnot. And then you have areas that are weaker from that point of view, either because you have structural elements such as a steel column or a concrete slab, or maybe stuff is installed poorly. Maybe the insulation sub did not do the job properly. So part of the modeling of the thermal bridge has two goals. In the first place, a weak area of the building envelope leads to potential risk of mold condensation. You do want to avoid that. Again, we try to promote people first. Building should be for people, and part of the thermal bridge modeling is to assess temperature factors that basically tell you by design if that detail is going to be subject to mold condensation or not. That is the first goal. We want to avoid that, of course. And then in the second place, you want to assess the higher heat flow that you have through that thermal bridge, because the closer we get to buildings needing zero energy for heating and cooling, the more every little detail matters. And so if you do actually want to deliver that performance and have no performance gap, you do need to have that level of accuracy. I hope
one thing Enrico does in training, that one of his little analogies that I really like, is he talks about how there's the elephant in the room and then there's mice. And there are elephant thermal bridges and mice thermal bridges. And often one of the misconceptions when you get to high performance is that all thermal bridges must be mitigated to the same degree. But you'll see that some of them are more serious than others, have a bigger cost impact than others. So the analysis side of it is really to help you also identify, okay, is this something that's really going to affect the performance to a large degree that it requires a lot of mitigation, or is it a smaller thermal bridge, a mouse in the room, not an elephant in the room?
That's a good one. So the mice to the elephant. So on a simple way of seeing it, if you take the slab of your building and you have 2 inches of XPS under it, you're creating the sweater effect there. But if you have a porch, right, coming off of a building with a giant concrete block and steel supports coming back and forth, which one is the mouse and which one is the elephant?
Steel, in my eyes, is always an elephant.
It's a heat highway.
Yeah, it becomes a heat highway. So it also depends on the climate, because in mild climate zones, everything becomes more of a mouse. And in cold climate zone, everything becomes more of an elephant, just because it's more extreme. So there's a climate specificity to this. The long story short is that while many objects may be thermal bridges in theory, their effect, their impact in terms of avoiding mold condensation and heat loss is minimal. So we try to allow builders to understand this. Otherwise, you start Googling, hey, do I need to have thermal bridging to avoid thermal? It looks like an immense thing to do.
Right, it becomes intimidating. I think one of the things that makes passive, intimidating to builders is this concept of having to mitigate all of the thermal bridges. But really, when it comes down to it, it's understanding the why you're mitigating that thermal bridge or why you're eliminating that thermal bridge, because then you understand where you need to be balancing your attention and your money.
Perfect.
Yeah. Some of our buildings do have thermal bridges, and I sleep well at night because.
So, Mark, you have more mice, or do you have more elephants? You have more mice or more elephants, Mark?
Oh, do I have more ice? More? I think I have more mice these days. So typically, I have the 2x6 walls, and I use the T stud. So I have more mice.
What's a T stud?
I love it. Thermal bridge reduced.
I love it. All right, so I knew you were going to say that, so thank you.
Mark,
All
are
right,
you going to send us a T-stud to show in training?
What's that?
Are you going to send us a T-stud to show in training?
I would love to send you a T-stud for a mob. A mob pod. How about that?
My God. All right. Moving forward, everybody, we're at 41 minutes, so we're going to start flying through some of these so we can go back to the audience here in just a few minutes. So, all right, so we just talked about thermal bridge analysis. Let's get into something that I do not think, well, let me put it to you like this. These are not my words. These are your words, Mark's words. Something that most people probably have not heard of yet, and that is dynamic moisture analysis. Is that WUFI?
It is.
All right, who wants to take that one? Who wants to talk about WUFI?
I'll take that one. And if you ask,
do you see the division that's happening here? Like, when it's geeky or I just.
Hey, well, that, you know what though, that's Mark and my relationship right there. Right? If somebody needs to geek out and get into the scientific details, we go to Mark. If you just really want to understand what Mark said, you come to me.
Exactly.
That's how it goes. All right, let's go to it.
I think the biggest concern that we get in the construction industry in North America overall is moisture management and how to make buildings durable. And the way the code handles that is via the dew point method calculation. And while that is okay for some cases, you want to keep in mind that the dew point method was developed around the 1930s, and with the science and the method was available at the time. Now, the science has evolved tremendously from there. And while you may have some assemblies that fail the dew point method as a calculation, you actually have many more products, the SIGA products that you mentioned, or other products such as smart vapor retarders available on the market. They are able to adjust the amount of vapor they let through just by opening and closing their pores, just to simplify things. So the science right now is way past what code does. And this allows us to design buildings to be extremely more durable and resilient, in that if you do have a leak from an infiltration of whatever kind, you can design that assembly to dry out effectively by design, in combination with the way you air seal the building, the way you ventilate the building via the mechanical system. So the dynamic moisture analysis is something that allows us to design to that degree. WUFI is actually an acronym from German. It means Wärme und Feuchte instationär. At 13, for some reason at 13, I decided to study.
Mariana, what does that mean?
Hold on, Enrico. Can you say that 5 times fast, please?
Yeah.
Wärme und Feuchte instationär.
He doesn't even get your checking yet. So, look, translate it.
So that means heat and moisture transfer dynamic, for those of you that don't speak German. Sorry about that. So, and that basically is a way to say, hey, based on your climate and based on your wall assembly, there's a way to design and build in resiliency towards moisture. And, you can bypass the old dew point method that, you can comply with code that's just doing a more sophisticated analysis. It's a way to design like a car you had your airbag, your seatbelt. Code still looks like a car, as it was a horse wagon, like with horseshoes and all that. That is the way.
Well, and you had mentioned silos before. Like, you have to remember that codes are developed in silos, and there's the energy efficiency part, there's the mechanical ventilation part, and the integration that's necessary between those two concepts to meet high performance. The closer you get to zero, the more that integration matters, and the farther you get from that in code. And so that's kind of that's why we adopted passive as our internal building code. That's our benchmark, because it replaces building code for us. It's not a certification. It's really a substitute for kind of the science that we want to meet, the performance standards we want to meet.
It's the building code for 20 years from now. So why aren't we doing it today, right?
Exactly.
So we have just Nikki. WUFI is one of the best and user-friendly.
There are a lot of software in our world that are not user-friendly, and that is definitely a thing.
So something that is important here to say is that you can only rely so much on a software. That's why we try as much modeling as I love doing, which I do. we try to teach best practices and to bring solutions that so you don't have to go back to remodel every single variation.
Right, and as anybody who uses software on a frequent basis, and any modeling software knows, the data you get out of it is only as good as the data you put into it. So if you don't have the understanding of how that was developed, what the standards are behind that, what the research was behind the reasoning, you're just spitting out numbers that may not actually correspond with your actual as-built performance.
Yeah, for sure.
Dave, this makes me think of Joel right here, doesn't it?
It does. It does. When it comes to data and modeling and really understanding, everything there's the built environment, right? And then there's the data environment. And how do you build it twice and not physically build it twice? Build it physically once, but build it, on a computer first.
That's exactly what we say all the time. And part of the reason we really like working with manufacturers that are going towards standardized products and certifying their products is that, one of the things that comes up all the time in passive is that a project, you spend so much time on it, it ends up feeling like a prototype, but then it's not replicated exactly. And so, you look at, I always compare it to the aerospace industry. They're not building a plane and then seeing if it flies and then building another plane. They're virtually building, failing, testing, failing again, failing fast, and doing it again a million times until they get that computer model that looks like it's going to work, then build that one.
Well, in the words of Stephen Basic, all buildings should be built twice. But what you're saying here is, let's build it virtually.
Yes.
And know what we're going to do and how it's going to perform. And the steps we're going to take to implement and install correctly so that it performs at or above our expectation.
Yes, and while single projects, especially smaller ones, don't always have the budget to do that, which is totally understandable, manufacturers do. So if we can standardize products more to help smaller projects get to that standard, that's really where we're interested. And then in bigger projects, you do have more ability to shift the budget up front to the design end and spend more time on that modeling.
Yeah, and you know what? Just last week we had Denise on, and that's what Denise does. She looks at people's products. So if you're a manufacturer and you're wondering how your products qualify to be used for lead, passive, what have you, look at last Friday's show. We had Denise V. Staff on, and this is what she does. She certifies and goes in, and it's not a little report from my understanding. There's a lot of work that goes into having a product meet the standards that it has to meet to be healthy and safe and sustainable.
There is definitely. Enrico does the PHI certification for windows and construction systems, and it's without that, you're expecting designers to input all that data on their own to try to get to, and it's unrealistic. So.
And that really helps moving the conversation. So you develop the product, so then you can focus the attention onto installation. So then you really focus the project-specific focus to the installation, not on the research.
Right. Mark, I was thinking with Enrico, because there's another thing he does. He certifies the windows. I think we need to give the guy a Dos Equis and call him the most interesting man, right? Like, we can make a Dos Equis commercial out of this. He's got the accent, right?
Well, I don't always build the code, but when I go beyond code, it's always passive.
I knew it was going to come. All right. Good. All right, here we go, everybody. Let's jump into it here. This comes after dynamic moisture analysis. So why don't you guys tell us why?
So this is where we work with manufacturers in say, hey, you have a window that you want to meet certification for climate zone 5, Chicago, Denver. So we look at the conditions, climate in the climate zone, and what kind of window frame they're working on, whether it is UPVC, thermal broken aluminum, and we help them develop the product so that you can meet avoidance of condensation, thermal comfort in terms of average internal temperature and things like that. So this is where we develop products so that they are pre-certified, and so we can make them available to design teams and construction teams for installation. So this is more about where we work with manufacturers.
And there's all kinds of component, windows are kind of the most complicated one, but we're seeing more and more panelized systems, and that's great.
So talk me through, give me an example of a panelized system that you're seeing that this falls into.
Absolutely.
So we're working right now with a couple of Australian companies, or similar would go for North American made products. They typically develop their panelized system based on their market, the price point, and their internal logistics that make their the secret sauce, pretty much. And they have that product, and they want to push it to meeting passive in different climate zones. So they come to us, and we set goals in terms of what climate zone you want to comply, what kind of R values, what kind of smart vapor retarders you want to use, what kind of insulation. We look at all of those, try to simplify things, because there's great value in simplicity for sure. In construction is definitely something valuable. And based on that, we help them develop all the junctions and details to mitigate thermal bridges. I intentionally did not say eliminate, because some thermal bridges are nothing to worry about. And so by doing that, and by design, you can have panelized systems that in climate zones, different climate zones, are free of mold condensation, are comfortable, and they are durable. So that is a combination of the analysis we chatted about earlier, but applied at the manufacturer level, so that they can then deliver the product on site after they have the processes down in the factory. This is kind of bringing the virtual prototyping that the aerospace industry already does on airplanes, for example.
It sounds like all of us need to reconvene over by Integra and have a offsite building science training day.
Yeah, that'd be great. We really think, that's the direction. I often tell the builders in training, like, you are product developers, really. And that's something to remember when you're communicating high performance and trying to sell it to your clients. And even just in the way that you present a budget to a client with all the line items that we typically show them. Yeah, you show them a list of products and they see that Windows line item and they go, ooh, that's really expensive. Let's back off that. But a window can make or break the passive level to a project, right? And so what you have to kind of explain or sell to them is the concept that you have designed and developed and you're going to implement a product that performs a certain way. Like you would buy an iPhone, you don't go into the iPhone and start hacking it up and choosing which bits you want. There are features you pick, perhaps, but the performance is there. And so builders are going through this kind of mentality shift towards being product designers, really. And the envelope is your product.
Right. I love it.
Well put.
All right, listen, we're at 54 minutes, everyone. Let's hop into some comments here. Mark, Jerry just doesn't want to see you today.
Uh-oh.
Here we go. For Irish codes, you must calculate the thermal cold bridge in the building in order to avoid condensation, but also to calculate the energy performance certificate for the building under the European Building Performance Directive, EPBD, which requires a kilowatts of energy demand per meter squared for the building, or the equivalent of MPG for the building, so you can make easy comparisons between buildings. I didn't know they had mass per gallon or miles per gallon in buildings, Mark.
Yeah, the equivalent is miles per gallons, right? So that's a brilliant way of putting it, Jerry. We've tried doing that for years, and when you simplify what you're doing, then you get more people subscribing to the system. So you did it right there, Jerry, and we subscribe.
Absolutely.
I think the comparisons to the automotive industry are really great. It's an industry that we've standardized over time, and building needs to go in a similar direction. Lots of people draw comparisons there. It's fantastic.
It's one of my favorite storytelling ones, but we'll save it for another show.
All right, here we go. Steve Black, the balance of money and effort is crucial. That's always a big topic, right? What's it going to cost me? How can I do it? What's the saving? What's the sales pitch to the consumer who's paying for it? Right? Or what's the value is not really the sales pitch. What's the value? And what's the savings? Like why? Right? Because that's where a lot of builders, they do not know how to translate sometimes an upfront cost to the value to the consumer. Is that accurate?
Communicate the attributes. So it's a shift in cost. It doesn't mean more cost. It's a shift in costs. So when you're focused on the health and comfort, you're also experiencing the quiet. So people don't think of energy efficiency, and they really don't want to talk about it. But once they're in the building, they're comfortable. It's not drafty, and it's the same temperature around them. It's very quiet. That's an attribute that they can experience, and one that they won't want to live without.
Yeah.
And just to build on that real quick, there's a direct correlation of quality of building components and comfort. So, and there's an expectation with components of buildings that comply with code. And the assumption is that, oh, I'm buying a brand new window, therefore I will be comfortable. Now, that expectation is misplaced. And if you explain how physics works, just by the simple example I'm going to make, to your average client, they will not want basic stuff. They will want the good stuff. Now, if you get a 0.3 U value window, and you are in climate zone 5, Chicago or Denver, with 15 degrees outside and 17 inside, the physics tells you that the temperature on the inside of that window is going to be 52 degrees. So don't tell your client you want to have a 0.3 window. You ask your client, hey, do you want to have 53 degrees or do you want to have 65 degrees? Because that is what they have experience of. They have no experience with U values. Now, if you do explain that in those terms and they can understand, they will never buy the 52 degrees window because
they want the comfort.
That's pretty bad. So they want the comfort. So it's the relationship here is more about showing the value. There's a huge gap between current code and what shelter means for people.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right, moving through the comments. Steve Black is busy in here today, Mark.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve.
Busy. Thank you for all the comments, right? Not going to get to them all, but we'll get to quite a few of them. Steve said 2D versus 3D over time analysis. Love it. Dew point is 2D versus DAM, which is 3D over time. Mark, explain that one too. I don't understand it.
That's kind of what I was saying before, the dew point method being a more outdated calculation method.
Got it. Okay.
So
that's why we have Mariana to break it down for us. And
well, like a whole lot more complicated than that.
I know, but I understood that part. That's what matters. All right. Love it. All right. Here we keep going through. Henry Mickelberg gave +1 on Jerry's Irish Reg comment. Love it. LinkedIn user. I think this is, let me look here.
That's a very true statement. We do need more products. Thank you for saying that.
That was AJR. Not sure who it is. I'm just looking on LinkedIn they don't have their public profile up. All right. Probably the same person, I'm thinking. Need to encourage more manufacturers to get their products in there. Absolutely. Moving
We are
on.
encouraging you. Come aboard.
Yeah.
Man, Jerry's busy today too. Take a look at kingspancentury.com, my old company. I founded in Ireland, and see the wall specs on their website. Absolutely. I think what Jerry's saying is he's been doing this for a while. He gets it. He does.
You know, one of the things that comes up a lot is like how, I don't want to say behind, but the lag from European implementation to American implementation of this stuff. And that's definitely something we experienced when we moved from Europe to here. It was a little bit of for me, reverse culture shock. But we can learn a lot from those international standards that have been set, and international regulations and international practices. And so that's where we really feel like, you know, the American market can be a little insular sometimes, especially manufacturers. So if we can bring in more examples of similar climate zones in other countries that are handling something a certain way, that can definitely be applied here better.
Absolutely.
All right, let's just call out a few other people here real quick. Thank you for joining us, Jose. Appreciate it. He's given us some claps. I love it. So I think that's it, Mark. I think we've gotten through everybody. So I told you, is that the fastest hour of your lives or what?
It was great. Thanks, guys, for having us.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Yeah. Well, listen, everyone. I mean, today's been a great show. Again, it's all about training. It's all about education. It's all about spreading the word about BS Friday, Passive House, building science, offsite construction. They all co-mingle together now. And I think the more people that can join us and can share what we're doing would be absolutely great. I'm going to make a selfish plug because we finally also have a chance to talk our talk at the Building Systems Council next week as well. I will be hosting the NAHB Building Systems Council Week for the National Association of Home Builders. And you know what? We're getting a lot of support from all those guys and girls over there as well. They're really, really taking a hard look at how we build and things that we're doing. And, that's like trying to steer a cruise ship, on a 90-degree angle. It just doesn't happen quickly. But with that said, please join us for that. That's next week, the 21st through the 25th. You guys have been awesome. And I'm going to put your link up here one more time because I want everybody to understand. Go to their website, EMU Systems, check them out, and hashtag Run Wild Build Passive is their hashtag. And I'm sure if you use that hashtag, you will find a lot of great stuff. Go, Mark.
The other thing you're able to do is you're able to take these trainings virtually. So it's something that they pivoted on and brought. So all the folks that are joining us live virtually, you could join Mariana and Enrico virtually, and you could be part of the mob too.
Thank you.
We got to have EMU mob shirts. You got to be careful in this day and age. You walk on the street with that, they may take it the wrong way.
I know.
The world is changing as we know it. All right, everybody, please hit that like and share button one more time. Please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. Mark always needs some thumbs up. Thank you, Mark Bare Naked Willie, for joining us. Mariana, Enrico, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules. I'm Dave Cooper. We will see you next Friday on BS Friday. And be sure to join me tomorrow morning, Coffee with Dave, 9-ish. I'm never on time for that one, but I'll be there. I promise. I'll see you next time. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.